Face to face. This is great for me. I'll tell you why. Well, let me tell you a little bit about our partnership. It's decades long, and we've gotten along great. We've been productive together, and we're very, very busy. And part of it is that, sure, we know about each other's lives and we talk about it, but mostly we leave each other kind of alone, and we don't dig deep. If somebody's a little reluctant to get into it, we don't really push it, you know? And, you know, even though Brian's written these books and so forth, you'll notice he still hasn't written, you know, an autobiography. He sneaks some of himself into these books. It's there. It's part of his life experience. But this is my chance to dig, right? And he can't squirm. He can't take a call. He can't pick up a thing for an executive. He just has to answer my questions. So, you
well,
know.
Ron, by the way. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, you know, so I as I drill down a little bit, here's something that I just want to say that I've really discovered. We would go into meetings early on in our relationship, and I'd love to talk a little bit about how we met and how we got together, and we'll do that in a second. But
we can do that, Ron. And it's an honor to have been a partner of yours and still a partner for the longest partnership in history.
Thank you.
Totally. And it's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we did meet, and we will get into that, but one of the things that I noticed right away was Brian's ability to make things happen, and it wasn't from a place of status. It was will, and I didn't really understand the how and the why of it, but I certainly always appreciated it. And you know, as our business has grown, our partnership has grown. Imagine Entertainment is growing. I mean, it's in the last 18 months, 2 years, it's just remarkable. So many different kinds of business sort of lanes that we're in, which just means that power of communication that I didn't fully understand in the beginning, but of course that was at the root of it, is something that Brian has continued to refine, and it has evolved, and now the conversations are global and varied, and I think it's just great that he wrote not only Curious Mind, but now Face to Face, because he's made a science of these things, and in his own way, it's fun to hear him talk about it, and I have heard some, but I'm going to hear more tonight, so here we go.
Okay, here we go.
Well, so how would you describe the way we got together?
Well, the exact facts of it are that we both went to USC. I guess you were in the cinema school, were you?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't. They say I was because I've done well. But I really, and I'm on the board, but I was never in the cinema school. And we literally crossed paths, he and I, and we both weirdly remember that we crossed paths. I remember he had open-toe sandals on. I thought, you know, and, but anyway, so we sort of had some sensitivity, you know, awareness. And then what happened is...
you had a Porsche. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I had a Porsche. I had a Porsche. You have to have a Porsche. USC, anyway. So how do we get together? So then we met. We did sort of slightly overlapped because I was producing movies for television at like 24 years old, and you were directing and sort of producing them at 23, I guess.
TV movies, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, so we were young guys getting shit done. So anyway, and so we had I had a mentor. Her name was Deanne Barkley. She was the most powerful woman in the media business.
She was very much a mentor to me too. And by the way, I'm glad you mentioned Deanne, because she's one of the first real powerhouses, female powerhouses in the industry.
Yeah.
In the second iteration, sort of in the beginning, women had a lot more, you know, power.
Can I do a giant digression?
Yes. But
serious?
People should know about Deanne Barkley because she was her own kind of champion and pioneer.
She was. Yeah, for Deanne Barkley. All right. So listen, I don't know if you know this story. So basically, Deanne Barkley, the person we're just referring to, I went in to pitch a couple of movies for television to her.
Right.
and she was from New Orleans. She smoked pot all day long. But she was incredibly smart, brilliant, really brilliant. And she ran all of the programming for NBC. And she converted her office to a New Orleans-style office with white plank floors. It was New Orleans. And she had a bird cage. When you walked in, she had a bird cage with birds in the bird cage. And then you get to her desk, then there's couches, and I'm pitching her. So her back is to the bird cages, which are quite far away because she has a huge office. And I'm pitching, and I'm looking at her in the eyes, and I'm super connecting. Like, really, I feel like I'm hypnotizing her almost, you know? I mean, it's what you feel is what it is. Who knows? So in any event, and she's really loving these two ideas. And all things are going well. There's a thump. Her bird dies. This is a true story. The bird falls and dies like a heart attack. And I thought, oh no, I'm screwed. I keep looking at her, waiting for what's going to happen. And it was so crazy. She started laughing hysterically. She goes, ha, like that. And I thought, oh my God, thank God. And she bought these projects. And it was the beginning of my career. But it was the bird that died and her reaction to it that ignited the whole thing. So anyway, go ahead. Oh, no, we're talking about us now.
But that's our first great face-to-face story of the night.
That was our first face-to-face story. It was a real thing. So, that happened. Now I move on. I produce these movies for TV. I'm 25 years old. They're quite successful. One is a 20-hour miniseries on the Ten Commandments, modernized today. And the other one is this very highly rated sort of American Graffiti at the Beach. That's the dignified way of stating girls with very little clothes on. So, at the beach. So in any event, so now all of a sudden, I leave wherever I was. I know where I was. And at Warner Brothers. And I get this big job, this big producer job at Paramount, that Michael Eisner and Barry Diller anoint, you know. And now I have an office on the 3rd floor of, it's called the Director's Building. And my office was perfect because I could open the window. It was all a manual system at that day. And open the window, and I could yell out at people and say, hey, you know, stuff like that. I see Richie Cunningham out the window. And I have this discipline of meeting a new person every week that is principally doing something, making a difference in the media business of all sizes, shapes, and stuff. And he's a superstar. He's a star on 2 television series, legendary, iconic American hero. This guy here. And it's Richie Cunningham. I go, Ron Howard. I yell out the window like that. Oh, I just lost this. Now what do I do? Ron, you're going to have to help me.
Plug it back on.
So then...
there you go. You did it.
I did it. I'm clear. So, I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Oh, no. So, paid professional has come to our aid.
Okay. So, let me get, so when I yell Ron Howard, I don't even know I'm telling you this story now.
I probably didn't look at you right away.
I think it scared you because you kind of darted away from me and you went into what was your office, but you avoided me. There's no doubt you avoided me. So I called your office. I said to the assistant, hey, I was the guy that kind of yelled at Ron Howard. I'm a producer on the lot. I'm like a real person. And I really want to meet Ron Howard, blah, blah, blah. So he agrees to meet. So the shorter version is we meet. He comes up to my office.
I got to add right now something.
Here we go.
I'm going to disrupt.
Okay.
But, see, as I've been in the business all my life. I was even producing television movies. I directed a movie for Roger Corman. The truth is, I had never actually had a Hollywood lunch meeting. I'm an introvert. I didn't really know how to do that. So the upshot of all of this is what Brian invited me to was actually the first thing that in retrospect I would say was kind of a grown-up Hollywood sit-down.
I didn't even know that.
And it led to a lot, I'd say.
Okay, so we did that. So we had this Hollywood lunch.
Right.
Then we had a meeting in my office, and he had this aura of goodness about him. Plus, he had real credentials behind him. Right. And we both shared our values and aspirations. He really, really wanted to be taken seriously and as a director and do a major theatrical film. I wanted to be taken seriously as a theatrical movie producer, and so we both sort of bet on each other. Two guys that were sort of out of work, but I mean, we had jobs, but you know, we
weren't achieving our dreams.
Goals. Yeah.
And so Brian, you know, very flattering about what he's saying. I saw somebody who, you know, was willing to talk to me about movies, but secondly, he had ideas, he had energy, and very shortly, I saw that he had this ability to get inside of offices to talk about these ideas with me in tow as a director. And you know, Brian didn't have, you know, he had a few credentials. He'd worked for some interesting bosses. He was an up and comer, but he's also, look, let's be honest, he's a bit of a character. And people would actually come up to me as the partnership started to blossom a little bit, and they'd say, so what do you see in the Grazer guy, by the way? and what I saw was not passion, fire, ideas with this intelligence, and I didn't understand, in fact, that he had this gift for communication, for connecting with a room once he got inside. And I also felt chemistry. I felt like we were together a great fit.
Oh. So that's how we met then. That's what happened.
And we actually got things done. You know.
And so then I had two ideas for movies. One, I'd written a couple of bad scripts on this thing called Splash about a man and a mermaid. The other one was a story that I had. Oh, thanks. The other was a story that I had, which was an R-rated movie about a call girl ring run out of the New York City morgue. Because
based on a true story.
Yeah, based on a true story. Night Shift, that's it, Night Shift. And I was a kind of guy that, I was a little bit of Bill Blazejowski in me. Right. And anyway, he picked the R-rated movie because Happy Days, he said, I'm going to go do something a little more dangerous. And he did.
And I want to talk about sort of how we got some of those projects going, but a little bit later. I think it's interesting to talk about, well, look, Curious Mind was a New York Times bestseller, and people come up and talk to me about it, and
it's in almost 30 languages around the world.
Well, it's a great book.
30.
Again, drawn from your personal experiences now, but why face-to-face now? Why did you choose this as your next book?
Well, okay, so I chose Face-to-Face, The Art of Human Connection, for my next book because I realized that all of the conversations I'd had that had produced or been part of producing or creating a movie or television show had come, any of those movies or television shows that were actually any good, that actually had real human insights implanted in them, that created real feeling and emotion, came from real people that I'd met. And they came from my curiosity conversations, or, busboys in restaurants, or today Uber drivers, or I was just telling somebody that I was in Buenos Aires, this Venezuelan kid, I didn't know he was from Venezuela, was like the smartest. If I could have brought him back, he was 21 years old, so smart, so capable, unbelievably articulate. He learned how to speak English just through video games. And I mean, you learn so much. This is the way to prospect ideas, which I think I am pretty good at. But every single thing that I've learned, all of the joy that I have in my life, comes from human beings and being present with human beings and from face-to-face connection. And again, just to punctuate this even more, nobody is going to share some deep insight with you unless you look at them and they feel your presence. And nobody is going to promote you. No one's going to give you your B round or A round or D round. No one is going to give me $120 million for a movie unless I'm connecting with them and they're feeling my heart. And when you feel somebody's heart, the close cousin to that is their intentionality. And I don't dock people for spelling, punctuation, and grammar, and I don't want to be docked for that. I want I want to be in alignment with people's intentionality. And that can only be intuited through a face-to-face connection. And, it's got to be started by my wife. So that's why I wrote it, because I just sort of retrofitted back all of these conversations that have been gateways to so many things that have been of value, like Friday Night Lights, or I can go through the movies, but those insights were transported from my personal conversations that were shared to me or my own insights that were available this way. And then it was all ignited by somebody that started working in our house that I didn't really know very well because she was new, part of a team. And Mary, said to my wife, Veronica, I really like Brian. And she said, well, do you know him? I mean, how do you know him? I said, well, I haven't talked to him much, but every time he speaks to me, he looks me in the eyes and it makes me feel like a human being. And I just thought that was really heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm feeling it heavy.
Yeah.
I'm one of those sappy people.
And it's, I mean, for me to throw my 2 cents in on the why now, it's so easy for people. The default communication mode is, text or an email, and it isn't quite the same thing. You actually believe
it's not.
You're not going to turn somebody around. You can keep a thing alive. You can ask a little pertinent question, but this point of actually making, of moving ideas around.
Or evangelizing.
Ways. Yeah.
I mean, in our business, the business of Hollywood, which is really one of the hardest businesses to crack and succeed at, survive and succeed, which we've, thank God we've been able to do. It's very, very hard to get people to believe in something as amorphous as an idea, to get teams of people willing to go with you on an adventure. And when it's not even written or it's not even green lit, and they're saying, I'm going to pass up on other jobs to be with you. You have to be face to face with people. You have to get their spirit engaged with your mission, and share that. And it only happens on that way.
One of the things that interests me about both books, and knowing you as a friend and seeing you sort of grow, there's been this ongoing evolution, intellectual evolution, an appetite for learning that has it's been kind of exponential. I mean, it's just still going. It's kind of exciting. But always interesting to me, I have 2 friends who struggled. Henry Winkler with dyslexia, and he's written books about it, and I understand his story, and your own journey. And both of you guys have handled it a little bit differently, but I see some real parallels there. And talk about how the dyslexia, kind of influenced your mode of learning and also your point of view about life, because it's been a driving agent in your success and happiness.
So if you purchase this book, called Face to Face, sitting right here, Exhibit A, you'll get all the details and the techniques of how to get ahead. No, but I mean, it's all the different sort of, it's taking this very simple method of looking at somebody a certain way, not trying to hypnotize them or do anything kind of weird, but just looking at, which creates a set point of you're present and I see you as a person. And in the case, what was your question again?
Dyslexia.
Oh, dyslexia. Oh, yeah. I was diverting it. Here comes the. Okay. So basically, I had quite acute dyslexia as a child and got straight Fs. I mean, literally straight Fs. Occasionally, I'd get a D. I don't know how or why I was able to rise to that level at that point, but I couldn't read anything, and so therefore, I created a very strong and useful system of being resourceful. Of anytime the teacher looked at me, I'd look away, or I'd look down, or I'd invent a cough, or I'd throw a pencil and not be caught for throwing the pencil, or I'd do anything to get that person off me. And even if it was a student that asked me a question, I would divert it because I would never have the answer because it required reading. So that was pretty, relatively traumatic. And I didn't look at people. Once I gradually ascended to be to a place where I could actually read, which became like the 5th grade, I thought, wow, I can actually look at people because I could have the answer. And then I realized this sort of significant, sort of additive emotional element an intellectual element that was coming into play when you read people and you feel their energy and you understand whether they're with you or not with you. You read all these different cues. So I thought by looking at people, I was able to really gain so much, and I could exercise this muscle of curiosity that I had, and I really do enjoy that. So I was able to learn a lot. So I guess I'm sort of an autodidact. I did get through school, though, however, that USC. Remember that?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, yes, you did.
Well, I mean, look, I've seen you throughout the decades, have so many interesting conversations and turn people around, whether they're artists, whether they're executives, whether they're scientists, and it's always fascinating to me. What I'm curious about, and I now recognize, as I said, that you've been on this kind of journey, but I'm interested now that you've gained this insight and you disciplined yourself around the idea enough to write a book about it. I'm kind of curious about some circumstances where you've had these kind of key conversations, and like you were talking about Deanne Barkley and that sort of connection, whether you knew it or not, or whether it was just intuitive, that you actually applied those principles, the kind of principles that you were beginning to talk about with the book. But I want you to start with one, because I was so impressed early on when you told me that you almost always were able to talk your teachers into a better grade. Yeah. How did that work?
I'm sure some of you have done this. But, well, no, I
Probably no one, Brian. I think.
Really? Okay. Well, trying to be inclusive.
Or at least succeeded.
Yeah. So in high school, I would always do that. Often I could turn a C into an A. I just jump right over the B. So I would just ask, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I would request a meeting, and if they said no, then I'd find another way in. There wasn't Facebook at the time but I would figure out what this tree looked like, where the branches, how do I get in? And really, I lobbied my way multiple different directions into a conversation with a teacher. And that conversation always led to me elevating that grade.
And what do you think you did in retrospect? What do you think you intuitively were doing that you would now say, is like fundamental to succeeding in communication?
Well, okay, I don't know exactly, but do you remember prior to setting up Splash, it was at United Artists.
Right.
There was a woman named Anthea Silbert.
Yeah.
She was like a superpower woman running United Artists. And she kept putting Splash in turnaround, meaning like threw it out in the garbage, said, go get rid of it. I turned her around at least 4 times. Literally. She goes, this Brian Grazer, you throw him out the window, he comes in the door. You throw him out the door, he comes in through the ground. He comes in through the tunnel. He goes down the chimney. You can't get rid of him. And that was this woman, Anthea Silbert. That's how she characterized me. But it was really just an extrapolation of what I was doing in high school and college.
Well, I'd see you talk to agents, and you'd be able to pick on some kind of rhythm.
Is a temporary point of view, Ron.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Temporary.
Well, we'll talk about situations with movie stars where you've been able to understand them, make that connection, and turn things around.
Well, and I didn't mean to sound big about that because it is a humbling task. Right. It is. With movie stars, I have so many stories with movie stars. Well, movie stars demand you being present. They won't say it, and they see and feel every single thing. I mean, you probably know this, that if you have disrespected an actor, they will remember it for 25 years. And they can ignite the hate that they had 25 years ago like that fast. I swear, I've seen it. I haven't been a recipient of it. Fortunately, the first one that comes to mind is Bradley Cooper. That was a good one. Bradley Cooper, who's amazing. I met him, almost at least 15 years ago, and he was late to the meeting, and I was eating in my office, and I could tell he was hungry. And I said, "Why don't I order you something?" No. And he felt he's a humble guy. He's a polite guy. Anyway, I gave him half my sandwich. I forgot that I gave him half my sandwich. I've heard recently, I love Brian Grazer. He gave me so it works both ways. So it does work that way. Right. But with stars, Russell Crowe, he had won an Oscar already. He had starred in A Beautiful Mind, which he was beyond exceptional. He won, he won us Oscars. Yes. He was so brilliant. And now I'm desperate to make this movie, American Gangster. It's something that I cared so deeply about, every aspect of this movie. The meaning of it, why it exists. I thought it was a demonstration of how corporate America in a weird way. I thought it was like a metaphor for that. I thought it was a lot of things to me. And I had to get it made. And all of a sudden, I get it mounted. I have Denzel Washington, and at the time, Benicio del Toro, and a director on it. And they've spent now Universal has now spent $33 million on building this movie here in New York City. They've wardrobed everybody, thousands of people, to recreate the period. They decide, unbeknownst to Denzel or anybody, that they don't want it. They're scared. They're scared of the director. They're scared. They pull the plug on the movie. They're willing to take the loss of $33 million. That's a lot. That would have been the biggest loss of any movie in the history of films that had never been made, honestly. And $33 million, that today would be substantially more. So they pull the plug. That's that. I think. Oh, and the chairman of the studio says to me, "Brian, we love you. You've made so many successful comedies and movies for our studio. We love you. Never say American or gangster. Apart or together, never say those words. And we still love you. You can stay here at Universal." Okay, I understand, sir. So I think, oh, wow, it was heartbreaking. The next morning, because usually these are so traumatizing, these really hard ones like that. Next morning I thought, wow, I can't forget American Gangster. I'm saying it today. I finish the shower, get out of the shower, and I think I'm going to build a better case. I'm not going to fight with these guys. I'm just going to create an irrefutable case where they need it. They want it. They're saying it to me. So I then decide, okay, first calls Denzel Washington. Denzel, this is a bummer. This is the worst thing. I need you to stay with me on this. I want to trust that if I can get this started again, you'll do it with me. And he said, yeah, I'll be there. Now, that was a function of a lot of things, because he's one of the most, if not the most talented and in-demand actor in the world. And number one, I met him when he was 21 years old, right here in this city, because he was a young guy that had tremendous promise, clearly. And now smash cut, it's got to be like 20 years later, we're in this situation, and every single conversation with Denzel is, you're very present, and it's one-on-one. He says, I'll do that. So then I track Ridley Scott down, who I'd asked like 5 or 6 times over the course of a few years, would you do this? Every single time he said no. This time, I had the advantage of, he had already had 2 martinis.
Is that in the book? Get him a little die?
But he loves martinis. I hope it's okay to say. Anyway, but I said, but it was a different time. reality is always changing, as we know. And I said, the script has gotten so much better. I know you've read it before, blah, blah, blah. You always assume people have read it. You never say, did you read it? You always assume you read it and liked it. It was the timing that was off. That's a rule. So I said, I know you really liked it, but it's really changed, and your favorite writer worked back on it again, Steve Zalian. I said, let me take a look at it. I'll let you know at the end of the week. He says yes, which was remarkable. And just because I reapproached him, the good vibe thing, his life is a little different, everything's a little different, he says yes. So now I've got Ridley Scott and Denzel Washington, and I say to get them going. Now it's about getting Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe had, again, won an Oscar, was in our movie, tremendous credentials. The role that I was asking him to play wasn't really written. It was sort of underwritten. And so I said, would you please ask him to do the movie, on and on. He said, I read it. There's no role, really. I said, you trust me. I will get Steve Zalian to collaborate with you, help you. You guys will do it together. You'll work on it. You'll enrich in it, but I need your absolute commitment. And Ridley's dying to work with you again. I didn't even ask Ridley, but I assumed that he wanted, it felt like a safe thing to say. So anyway, I was able to reunite these guys on something that was an absolute 100% no from Universal. Didn't want to hear it again. And then, of course, I did turn them around and it around, and we made the movie, and everybody was very proud of it. And it's a good thing, right here in your city.
There's another, I remember though, speaking of face-to-face, a conversation that you did have to have, sort of between that Ridley yes and before you could finally roll cameras, that was pretty intense with you and Ridley.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in the movie business, they have a thing called the Green Light Committee because they're all scientists. And so, in the Green Light, sorry. Okay, there's a Green Light Committee. And so there's all these yeses, yes, we're doing it. But then the yes becomes, we're taking it to the Green Light Committee. And so Ridley, all of us are assuming we're making it, we're going, we're spending money. But now the Green Light Committee has said to us, we will only make the movie and never come back for $112 million. Ridley Scott is an incredibly smart guy, a brilliant orator, and he sometimes does not want to listen to anything other than yes. So I need him to say yes to me, not me to him, about the $112 million. So I changed the physical dynamics in the room, because he's a Sir Ridley Scott. He's a very macho guy. He's called the General. He sits down, and I sit, instead of across from him, I sat so close to him that our knees were interlocked. They're interlocked, which kind of made him uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything. And I knew I could only say one sentence, and then he'd cut me off and talk about there'd be some literary reference or something to derail it. Anyway, I said, you have to say yes to $112 million, otherwise they'll never make the movie ever. Please agree right now. And he heard that sentence. He said, okay, I agree. Now he agreed, and we did it. Later, he told the studio he's got to make some extra scenes, and it moved up a little bit, but that was already, the boat had already left the dock.
Yeah. Well, just as you acted that out, well, there was something that's very significant in the book, and relates to what you're talking about a little bit earlier. Yes. Eye contact. Even when you acted out that scene, not only was it knees close, but it was also this eye contact. Yeah. So talk about that as something that you've come to really understand, and explain the way its importance and the way it works.
Well, you can't have fear in your eyes, even if I'm often afraid. But I'm often afraid or nervous or have just pre-anticipatory anxiety. Well, I'm Jewish. Anyway. I used to have 3 therapists. I had a tiebreaker. I did. It was a tough time. I was going through a tough time in my life. So, anyway, you probably didn't know that. But anyway.
I'm learning. This is it. This is what
That's how it happens here. So, what was your question again, Ryan? No,
Eye contact.
Oh, eye contact. So, what was it about eye contact?
Well, I was talking about the Ridley and locking in and the importance of it.
Yes, and I said you can't have fear in your eyes. Yes, right. Well, when you talk to, I know, when I talk to decision makers, or when I speak to master filmmakers like Ron or Marty Scorsese or Clint Eastwood, who I've worked with twice now, you have to say things with certainty, but not a punctuated certainty. You just have to say it with, what you say has to be so clear, so honest, because they know, they are truth detectors. They're geniuses at truth detectors, all of these master filmmakers and actors for that, stars like Tom Hanks. Oh my God. He's so good at this, at knowing where the bullshit is. And I think I've made 7 movies with Tom Hanks. But I have a rule with Tom Hanks and with all actors. I never tell them this, but they have a safe zone. They know it, though, but Tom Hanks and I used to surf together, and I was dying to get him to do a movie. And, we'd even talk. I would never talk to him about the movie while we're surfing or while we're showering or we're ever anything social. I'd only do it within the corridors of the channels in which we communicate professionally. Mm-hmm. And so you have to do that. You have to respect people's those walls. You just have to do that. So when I talk to Ron, and Ron's different things, we're so good friends, but Clint Eastwood, he just looks you in the eye, and he's been bullshitted by so many people that you don't want to be that person. And so that's kind of how you have to do it. You have to say things with clarity, confidence, and it all has to come from the most authentic part of you. You can be wrong, in fact, but as long as it's from a truth, that they will trust you. Trust is essential, and trust, again, doesn't come from brain to brain, words to words. It comes from heart to heart.
We're going to get to audience questions in just a second, but I got to run through just quickly a couple of things.
Are we doing well, or?
I think we're doing okay.
Okay.
Another real strength.
I can tell one more thing. Hold on. I got this crazy story. Okay, I have a crazy story.
Okay.
These kids might like. Okay. So, I decide I want to make Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor, and I want to do it again. And I literally have to get it that day. Otherwise, Disney, in fact, oddly, Disney was going to renew the option. I had a window of 1 day to act quickly, overpay, and get it done. I convinced Universal to do that. Act quickly, overpay, and get it done. I do it. I own the right to the Nutty Professor. I talked to Eddie Murphy about it because I've then done a few movies with him, Boomerang and others, and we're tight. And so now I've got Eddie Murphy. We've got this great take where the studio goes, sounds great. We think it's a green light, ready to go. Business Affairs, the legal department calls and says, oh, it's not closed. I go, how can it not be closed? This has been like 6 months. They go, Jerry Lewis has a clause where he's allowed to have a meeting, a one-on-one meeting with the rights, me, Brian, and he has to approve you. I go, oh, shit. This is the hardest thing in the world. Jerry Lewis is going to... Anyway, so Jerry Lewis comes to my office in Century City. I don't know if you know this story. Jerry Lewis comes to my office in Century City, and he brings a man with him, a man with a briefcase. They're together. The man is his Las Vegas lawyer manager. I don't know. That's what he said. That's what they say. So you got Jerry Lewis. You got the man. Abe. So I am so dialed into Jerry, and no, you have to tell the truth, you got to be honest. Jerry goes, I kind of like to be in the movie, da-da-da. I said, well, Jerry, we're kind of have it all figured out, and we're doing it this way, and so you can't really be in the movie. I can't say that. And then he asked for a few other things. He said, well, can I approve the actors that are in? I go, you can't really do that because then, it could be held up for a long time, and that scares studios, because then the movie just can keep costing more and more and more, and da-da-da. He keeps asking for different things. Eventually he said, what about a small role? I said, yeah, if we agree together on a small role, we could figure something out. He says, how about a consultant? I said, you can't have approval, but you can definitely be consultant. I absolutely respect you, Jerry. I mean, you're a genius, Jerry. You really are. I respect you. I want you to consult me all the time. I'll take your call all the time. All right, well, thank you. That really, really means a lot to me. I feel pretty good. He goes, I just would like to use the restroom. I go, okay. So somebody takes Jerry to the bathroom that's down the hall, and he leaves the guy, Abe, and we're making the small talk. Like, I don't know what to say to Abe, Abe goes, you really got on with Jerry, didn't you? I go, yeah, I really did. I really do respect him, and I really would like to consult with him. He goes, oh, you really would? I go, I really would. And then he does more of the stuff and a few little around the corners and questions with me. And so he says, so I think he liked you and the idea of consulting. If you really do it, I go, I benefit from having Jerry as my consultant. He goes, okay. The Jerry comes in. It's like literally quite a while. Like had to be 10 minutes. And then Abe says, all right, let's go, Jerry. Let's figure this out. I get a call at the end of the day. Jerry approved me. I'm in. You know why? The briefcase had a tape recorder in it. And you read the book on Dean Martin. I told the story to Ron and to Marty Scorsese last week at Toronto Film Festival. And of course, Marty knows him quite well. He goes, of course, that's what Jerry did. I didn't know that. Thank God I got it right.
Excellent.
So,
okay, we have time for a few questions.
all right, sorry, guys.
So here's one from the audience. What elements of your approach to connecting with people are able to be learned by others? And what elements do you think have to come naturally?
Learned by others. Well, you have to be, if I think I understand the question.
How much of this connecting can you actually
Learn.
Yeah.
A lot.
A book's worth.
What?
A book's worth.
There's no better answer. You hit the bell. That's right, an entire book's worth. That's it. Done. Yes, a book's worth.
But you're saying it can be learned.
It can be learned. It's gradual, but there's exact tips in this book. Tangible, real, behavioral tips. Right?
Do you have what you would characterize as a single greatest face-to-face experience in your life?
I guess it would be ours, huh, Ron? That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. we'll be hearing it. What mistakes have you made in your career that taught you a valuable lesson and helped you grow?
Oh, God. Well, okay. One mistake was made on a movie called Armed and Dangerous that I wrote with Harold Ramis. And we had multiple opportunities to cast it with really good people, but the studio turned it down. And bottom line is we make it, and the cards were really good, according to the studio, the cards. Harold and I looked at it and go, wow, this is shitty. But they kept going, no, it's great. Look at these cards. Look at these numbers. And they said, this can be perfect summer programmer. That should have scared me. When someone says programmer, run for the hills. So what's the thing I learned? I learned your gut knows the truth. You just have to face the mirror and say, what did I really see? What's honest? What we saw was it was shitty, and it was shitty. So good enough equals shitty. I learned that. I also learned, look, I went to Moscow to meet Putin because I had all these sort of validating and supporting data that the Kremlin, I was going to go to the Kremlin, I was going to meet them, da-da-da-da-da.
Well, by the way, he does these curiosity searches, so it's not even about a project or anything. It's about people that he thinks he's going to learn from, grow.
Yeah, they could have
That's
entirely
what the
different
Curious
points.
Mind is about. If you haven't read that book, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you.
Putin.
It's Putin. But anyway, you have to read the book for the Putin story. But I took this insanely crazy journey all the way to Moscow, got in the Kremlin, met the number 2 guy, Dmitry Petrov, and you have to read the book to see how crazy it really got. I'm sorry, I'm saying that to you. And I'll leave it at that. But I learned you have to trust the truth and empirical data and not bullshit yourself, which is, I guess, sort of what I was doing on Armed Dangerous, too. So, okay, what else?
So
I'm looking at this clock.
Yeah, we're getting kind of close.
Close
But
to the wire.
I just want to say that a lot of what you have done as a friend, an observer, and a partner is you've really worked nonstop on sort of elevating your taste. That's been like an objective,
Yes.
conscious objective, not just
Yes.
an accidental thing. And so I'm
What's to benefit this marriage?
Well, it benefits you and enriches you in lots of ways. And in terms of things like these sort of the curiosity conversations, connecting with people face to face and so forth, how do you think that has enriched, your that mission?
Okay, thank you. Well, the fear of atrophying is so great that it's a gravitational force that causes, that's an element in making me want to do these curiosity conversations. So whether they're the disciplined curiosity conversations where I actively research a variety of people and hope that they'll meet me, and often it can take a year for somebody to be in the right place at the right time for me to do that, but they are constantly enriching. Well, first they make your mind super active because you have to operate on a high level because that chemist or that Nobel laureate or that athlete is communicating in a language that's different than your language. So you have to at least be operational within their language, somewhat versatile within their language. Then you have to find out what are the internal parts of that engine, and then you have to be a really good date with that person so that they have something to gain from talking to you. So it's not just a one-way street, like I get you and then get to ask a lot of questions. You have to be able to research them well enough that you're going to get to places that will be benefit to them, that will be a benefit to Jonas Salk or Edward Teller or the guy that created Flow, that does this human called the Flow Genome Project. I just like this guy so much, Stephen Kotler, because flow state is such an interesting place to be. Or recently, Josh, he's probably spoken here. The kid that was the subject of searching for Bobby Fischer, Josh Wakenick, who became a master chess player, like the number 1 in the world, and was able to transport the architecture of what got him there, all of the detail of that architecture, to another discipline, which was a physical discipline, which is jiu-jitsu, which he also became, I think, number 1 in the world, and which is kind of fascinating. So you have to be smart with these people, otherwise you're a bad date, and bad dates don't get more dates. and I do this, outside of the discipline. I do it with, of course, Uber drivers. I do it with anyone because the more I enrich in my curation system, the better prospector I am for good and original and modern ideas, things that haven't been done before. I just have to tell you this recent Uber story, which you don't even know. I don't think you know. I had this Uber driver in LA, it's like 2 months ago, And he was a very big guy. I could feel his weight. But I didn't know how tall he was. I could tell he was a pretty big guy. I say, I try not to I try to keep the conversation somewhat limited or economic. I said, where are you from? He goes, Serbia. I said something about Serbia. So that somehow led me to, I said, are you also like a bodyguard part-time and stuff? And so I thought that would interest me, he says, yeah, I am. I said, do you have any fighting form that you know about? He goes, oh, yeah, in Russia we have a thing called Sistema, which is a form of martial arts. I go, really? Now, I love martial arts. I met a guy in a curiosity conversation out in the water surfing one day, and he was a third-degree black belt in Aikido karate. And I was producing a TV series, and I said, well, I'll let you be consultant if you teach me Aikido karate. I didn't have the money to pay him, so I traded him like he could get paid on the show. It was the one that was with Pat Morita. In any event, I'm going to get to the point. The Sistema guy, I'm going to barely get to the point. And then I said to the Sistema guy, look, could I pay you to teach me this martial art Sistema? He said, well, yes. And so I literally, that was on a Monday. Wednesday, I broke my wrist diving for a tennis ball that I thought was the most important thing in the world. Broke my wrist, had a cast. And on Saturday, with the cast, not because I'm tough, just because I like to honor my commitments, he was teaching me Sistema, and I still learn from him. So anyway, there you go. It just helps you.
Time for one last question.
Okay.
And I know it's a good area.
Yeah.
So the question here has to do with Apollo 13, one of my favorite movies, and any particular challenges in getting that off the ground. And I happen to know that's a rich area. And by the way, also talk about casting Tom Hanks, which was a very bold, unusual move at that time.
Okay, this will take 5 minutes. I'm going to go through it really quickly because I don't want to kill you guys here. Okay, so basically this. So I read a little 12-page outline on what from that Jim Lovell wrote that's going to be a book called Apollo 13. I like it. It could be about a lot of things. It could be about space aviation. It could be about space travel, why human beings need to go for adventure into space, or it could be about survival. Because I'm very interested in survival, I've met torture, I've met all these different people. So I'm interested in the survival part of it. That's my focus. Ron liked it. I know he had a different focus. Nonetheless, we both liked it. But survival was the thing that turned me on. And I like to celebrate greatness. So I'm thinking these three great men are doing a great thing, and they're really prepared, but something happens that caused them to search inside of themselves to have to survive what could be the most tragic event in space. Okay. So we're now ready to cast this movie. Because it's a script, it's now ready to go. And there's a lot of big stars. There's Kevin Costner, huge action star, big deal. Other big action stars. We're all ready to pull the trigger on one of those names. And then we say, I take credit for saying this. I don't know if I did. But I said, but wait, who does the world want to save the most? Tom Hanks. He didn't look like an astronaut, but the world wants to save him. So that became our choice.
Right.
Then that was a good thing. So then we have, now it's Ron, Tom, and I remember we said, wow, everybody knows the end of this story, so I think it's going to be good, but it probably won't make any real money, but like, what do you think? I think our highest number was, we said $40 million. I think it did $400 million. And it got 9 Oscar nominations, which was amazing.
Right.
And for Best Picture. Anyway, the last envelope of the night, they're going to say, all the odds are in favor of Apollo 13 winning all over the place. It's supposed to be that. You know, like every odds maker is Las Vegas, everything. We're supposed to win. We're winning. I have a speech. My speech is so crisp. It's so crisp and ready to go. I'm going to do this so well. And so Sidney Poitier, the great Oscar-winning actor, he speaks so deliberately. He handles the envelope so deliberately. He rips it open slowly and deliberately. I'm looking at him. And I'm sure I see a bee rolling off his lip, and it's going to be Brian Grazer. I get up to get that Oscar. I think I had my hand in my pocket. Anyway, I go up to get that Oscar, and he says, "Braveheart." It was the worst feeling possible. And the minute I pivoted and turned around, a competitive studio had a big L on his head, said "loser." It was the worst. It was absolutely the worst thing ever. So I sit down, and Jim Lovell, the actual astronaut, reaches over Ron Howard and Tom Hanks, and he grabs my wrist and he goes, "I never made it to the moon either." And he put the whole thing in perspective. I mean, I still had to take some Xanax that night, but
Well, it's been a great night. Please buy, read, and enjoy Talking About Face to Face, which is released today.